So Danny, you've been talking to dozens of different companies and Fortune 500 companies, large and small. What's the single most common question you've heard, and what would surprise people about it?
The question I get a lot is, am I going to lose the customer relationship if an AI agent is basically the front end to the experience? They're almost considering it to be like a barrier or a wall between them, their buyers, and them as a merchant. So the fear is, are we just going to become a fulfillment center? Um, and basically, the way I react to that is like, no, actually, what you're seeing in this new ecosystem is these AI agents are basically like having a VIP concierge for free, because it's gonna understand your product catalog. It's gonna maintain those hyper personalized recommendations for the buyer, free of charge, and you get to maintain that relationship based on the fact that we've built protocols that allow you to interact directly with these agents and meet the customer in the middle. So I always say, look at the data. The data is basically AI agents are making recommendations not based on just price and things that the typical buyer's concerned with. They're making recommendations based on quality, brand awareness. So it's almost like a race to quality instead of a race to the bottom. So the answer typically surprises them because it's countering a fear of theirs, which is, I have this fear that I'm going to lose the customer relationship, when in actuality, this VIP concierge service that you're getting for free is really helping to build more brand awareness and give even a stronger customer relationship.
Let's talk about discovery a little bit. So there's this difference between pre-training and retrieval, and how does a developer need to think about this, and how can they influence that?
Pre-training, when you think about it, it's really using an AI's long-term memory. So an AI agent may have scraped your website over a couple of years. It's going to know things from like 2023. It's going to have like different history logs, and it's more like a prestige thing of like knowing you, but it doesn't really translate to real ROI. So discovery is the first part of the journey, but retrieval, what we call RAG, is retrieval augmented generation. And this is the ability to say, okay, I now want to transact. And so knowing exactly what's in stock and what's available is way more important for ROI in the developer journey versus discovery. They're both important, but we really want to prioritize ROI in this experience, which is, yeah, it's prestigious to know about a product and a brand and have the history, but unless I can transact and actually turn that into an actual purchase based on RAG, then I've lost ROI in that scenario.
So many companies are blocking access to these crawlers entering their sites through robots.txt and stopping the recommendations that are happening.
Yeah.
What do you recommend they do in terms of auditing their robots.txt files?
I like to call it the doorman versus the bouncer problem. In the past, we've had bouncers, robot.txt, which is like, deflect all bot activity that's not sent in by Google or something of that nature. What we really want to interact with is a new methodology of having a doorman, which is understanding that some of these bots now are very critical. And you're going to be cutting yourself off if you take the bouncer mentality, cutting yourself off from a massive amount of AI search traffic. So in robots.txt, you can train it by going to the major companies, whether it's OpenAI, with GPT-bot, or Anthropic with Claude-bot. Google has Google-extended. Each one of these companies has the ability to go pull up their ledger of agents that are being used in these AI search queries. And you can actually retrain robots.txt to allow these agents to come in. You still want to block other bot traffic, but basically retraining robots.txt to be more of a doorman. It says, let these three in, and it'll mature over time as there are more companies that come online. But I would definitely focus today on OpenAI, Gemini, Anthropic, and understanding that tagging robots.txt to allow these particular bots is going to greatly enhance your AI search traffic.
If for businesses whose product is mainly content and not so traditional to selling a product, maybe publishers, that type of industry, what really are their options other than just blocking the bots completely?
This is a real problem. There are a lot of online content creators that are worried about agents scraping their websites, surfacing this content for free inside of a ChatGPT. Stripe recently released something called machine payments that helps with this use case. You can think of it as refactoring the status code that you get when an agent tries to obtain some of this content. In the past, you would have seen like a 403 forbidden error. You can now have a 402 response that says payment required. And Stripe's actually powering this based on X402, which is a protocol that allows you to prompt this agent for a microtransaction. Think of it as a paywall for agents. And the way the Stripe solution works is it utilizes stable coins. So we're thinking of a new world where agents are going to be interacting with each other, and they're not going to be paying fees like cross-border fees and things like that. So we're going to fund digital wallets with stable coins. These agents are going to be out negotiating with other agents saying, I'd like to have this content. Instead of getting a 402, you get instead of a 403, you get a 402, payment required. And then the microtransaction will initiate. So it's just a new refactoring that we're basically turning this into real-time licensing. So instead of these AI agents being like parasites that are like out there getting content for free, we're actually turning these AI agents into paying customers.
And it's all really some fascinating changes. Another one I was reading about was about LLMs.txt. And so how does that really differentiate itself from a classic sitemap.xml file?
Sitemap.xml, if we go back in time a little bit, it's really like a map of everything. It's an entire map of everything you've got on your site. Think of LLMs.txt as an executive summary. An AI agent pays for every token as it's reading content. So it doesn't want to parse your About Us page, your terms of service, read 500 archive pages. This is going to cost this agent a lot of tokens. And it really just wants to get to your core value proposition immediately. So think of LLMs.txt as it's a simple markdown file, and it's going to live at your root domain. And you really want to start with a pitch, like what is it that you sell, okay, in one sentence. So in other words, like you're treating this like an executive summary for agents, and you want to route to important docs. So things like OpenAI.yaml, manifest.json. It's a clean, high-level summary of your domain logic. So for example, inventory updates hourly, prices are in US dollars. You're giving this agent exactly what it needs to transact, and it's not wasting tokens, time, and money to read like hundreds of pages of content that is not important to the journey.
Actually, there are a lot of factors around handling non-human traffic. So there are a few terms I read in your doc earlier. Maybe you can help us understand these. So there's one, edge computing for token efficiency.
Most websites are very HTML heavy. CSS, JavaScript, robots can't even see this. You know, when AI agents are coming in, you're basically paying for bandwidth, and the agent is paying, and again, those tokens to strip out your navigation bar. It's very like lose-lose. So by implementing edge functions that will detect these GPT bots, serve a raw JSON file or a markdown version of your product page, this is going to cut your bandwidth cost and really increase the agent success rate by about 10x, because you made it easy to read. So the highest ROI really in agentic is making sure that you're not wasting the agent's time, the agent's not wasting tokens, going through like very heavy HTML, JavaScript, CSS. You basically want to write code that agents understand, and you want to basically make sure that that's served in an edge computing scenario very efficiently on the top end.
So if an agent queries 50 products in 2 seconds, this would typically trigger a sort of denial of service attack on your firewall. What can you do about this in terms of just changing your rules so you allow the agents through to allow their behavior, but also you block bad traffic in the traditional sense?
This kind of goes back to the 403 status codes. Instead of like doing a 403 block, you want to configure basically a challenge action or a throttling rule. You know, a DDoS attack is going to be powered by kind of a non-intelligent bot that's just going to keep trying over and over again, to your point, like 50 requests in a second. Whereas if you give it a challenge action or a throttling rule, OpenAI, for example, ChatGPT, some of the other agents, they're actually trained to respond to challenges. Once you identify the agent on your end saying that it's in the IP range of like an OpenAI or a Google, so you don't want to just trust the user agent string. You want to basically like identify IP ranges and things to make sure that this is a friendly bot, and then start setting a higher threshold, basically allowing verified guests, and then you can 10x the rate at that point for a standard user, and then just fail gracefully. Like if they exceed the limit, return a 429, which is too many request status code, and then a retry after 5. Because again, a DDoS bot is going to just continually trying to retry. It's not going to wait for 5 seconds or 5 minutes, so it's not going to understand these throttles. Whereas you're basically saying, you know, instead of just turning it off, wait in line. And an intelligent agent like something powered by OpenAI or Anthropic is going to understand how to wait in line versus just continuing to attack.
Well, thanks very much for explaining some of these concepts to us, because I mean, everything's changing so fast. So thanks once again, Danny, and we'll see you again on the channel again soon.
All right, thanks a lot, James.